My name is Zach Bucholz. Thank you for joining me today as we review Chapter 3, It Begins with a Vision That Becomes a Plan, from Mark Tucker's Leading High-Performance School Systems, Lessons from the World's Best. Our learning targets for today include the ability to summarize the challenges that educators face, as well as being able to explain factors that drive our vision. As we preview this information, consider the following questions. What challenges do we as educators face? And how do we overcome these challenges? A vision is meant to rally and inspire the community. This we know. But it must also be made of actionable steps necessary to achieve what is communicated and what is expected from the community. The challenge of creating a vision for the 21st century is the rapidly changing social, economic, and political environment in which we exist. Tucker states that the question is not how well schools are doing compared to how well they used to. It is how well the schools are doing compared to how well they have to now and in the future. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years into the future. The school leader's first job is to know what expectations exist for future-ready learners and to help their community understand these needs and expectations. The vision must bridge what is expected now and what is expected in the future. While there are concerns that automation and artificial intelligence will displace the workforce, advances in technology are only creating machines that are programmed to achieve certain tasks, that is, the function of their input, which can be analogous to the types of jobs the workforce used to employ. We, our parents, maybe our grandparents, witnessed the outsourcing of industrial jobs, many of which provided high school graduates with a steady income and strong benefits beyond the public school setting. We experienced the growing boom of the service industry as mega malls, movie theaters, restaurants, and others defined the urban and suburban community. However, even now we are witnessing the emerging dominance of streaming services, on-demand deliveries, telehealth appointments, and self-service checkout lanes with automated price-checking units. While there will always be a need for labor, it is quite unpredictable what that labor force might look like. What we know then is that we must rely on community experts and business leaders to help inform those who create curriculum, design policy, prepare teachers, and lead our schools. This will help define a vision that will service the needs of our community and the students that we serve. Future-ready needs, predicting the skills for a 21st and 22nd century workforce. Tucker outlines the changes that continue to occur in our workforce, with decreasing demand for perfunctory work and an increasing need for adaptive, cognitive work. These changes are exponentially increasing as scientists and programmers are developing intuitive learning and thinking algorithms in the technology that we use. History teaches us that whenever there's an economic downturn or a labor shortage, companies turn to intelligent machines to replace the labor pool. The push is not for labor, but for certified, credentialed, and adaptive workers that invent and contribute to the advancement of the technology. This automation is replacing service industry jobs like driving, cashiering, and secretarial positions, and is resulting in a gig economy that decreases workplace commitment, loyalty, and an investment in employees that was last seen in the 20th century. This is only made faster because of the global pandemic. Rather than asking which jobs will be done by the machines, they're asking which parts of which jobs now done by human beings will be done by machines in the future, and therefore, what parts of those jobs will be left over to be done by humans? What does this mean for us as educators? 1. High school graduates leaving with basic levels of literacy and skills demanded in our current curriculum will be left behind, unable to provide for their families with little to no way of catching up. We need to have job readiness skills and credentials for entry-level positions. Only a quarter of high school graduates leave with industry-certified credentials in the United States. And while our division created a strategic framework and vision to expand multiple pathways for postgraduate life with a goal of increasing certified credentials, more must be done to expand student exposure to these credentials and skills needed of them when they graduate in 5 to 10 years. We need to promote resilient and adaptable learners who can learn and process changing information and standards quickly. To do this, our lessons and the opportunities we create for students must foster strong analytical skills, synthesis skills, communication skills, and the ability to collaborate with others. In this independent, gig-oriented environment, the workforce is going to need laborers who can be disciplined and goal-oriented, as well as responsive to the changing needs of clients or the industry. What we're talking about is developing resilience in our students so that they can adapt to the rapid changes occurring in our society. This means developing strong social and emotional competencies. This is the one thing that continues to make human capital vital. That is, the ability to know and understand and use those values that make us more significant than intelligent machines. We have to increase our ability to be empathetic, to be team players, strong communicators, tolerant of others, strategizing to achieve our goals, and reflective of our current strengths and weaknesses. Educators should create an informed electorate that can navigate truth and fiction and anchor society to established values and norms so that we might move away from a citizenry focused on personal pleasure, self-fulfillment, and enjoyment. This plays into the efforts to support global-mindedness and to appreciate the interconnectedness of humans across the globe. Whether we like it or not, there is an increasing interconnectedness amongst us all on a planet that we share together. We must appreciate and understand the differences between us for a more tolerant world, so that we might be better problem solvers for the problems that affect every human. These are the steps Tucker believes are necessary to developing a vision that is responsive to the needs of a changing world. It is becoming increasingly automatized. The skills we deliver must adapt to the needs of the changing needs of the economy and our community. Community needs. The values and needs of the community should influence your vision. Knowing these challenges, leaders must communicate and ensure that the community is aware of them, and collectively must create actionable steps to prepare for change. The community must recognize the situation as a reality in which they live or they will face. You will need a realistic bridge to connect vision with action. Tucker provides us with 3 examples from Massachusetts, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. The economic changes that resulted from an increasingly globalized workforce were directly impacting businesses, laborers, and policymakers. Some communities witnessed a rapid decline in industrial jobs, particularly in the American Rust Belt. Others observed a radical transformation in their shipping industries to high-tech entrepôts with more investment and traffic flowing through their former agricultural communities. And some witnessed China re-emerge as an economic powerhouse after tight communist controls were loosened and a period of isolation came to an end. The needs of the community and its workforce were rapidly changing, and community leaders and educators had to rapidly change the ways in which they taught. The Massachusetts Education Reform Act of 1993 was signed into law by Republican Governor William Weld, working with the Democratic legislature, teacher unions, the business community, and education reformers. The Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education spearheaded an effort to overhaul the system in a bipartisan effort with increased funding and accountability. The law transformed Massachusetts' education system, with high school graduation requirements contingent upon testing performance, changes in professional development requirements for teacher license renewal, opportunities for administrators to independently staff their buildings, and an increase in funding over 7 years to support systemic change. The law remained intact and was not subject to politicization or partisan hackery. By staying the course with the law and the system in a bipartisan effort, Massachusetts was able to increase scores and improve learning for students. Education was not a political pawn in this circumstance, but rather an extension of the needs of the community. Zhang in China produced a 5-year plan in 2000 to develop a public education system in Shanghai. He wanted to plan both visionary and actionable steps with evidence-based practices and solutions. He divided his overall system into 30 parts with the help of educational and policy experts, and worked with researchers to gather research, data, and challenges and solutions. He wanted his participants to know what would be required to address the context of the themes that were presented as challenges for a current China and a future China. What he found was that those needs were not reflective of what the contemporary literature said at the time. He delegated work to 3 independent teams at 3 universities to outline a plan that would address these challenges and meet the needs of China. By using both a top-down approach and a bottom-up planning approach, he was able to design a plan for 5 years that radically altered the way China was educating its citizenry in Shanghai. Hong Kong's rapid transformation from a low-skilled trade city to a global finance center for multinational corporations required the local community to shift its education policies. The Education Secretary Fanny Law worked in collaboration with business leader Anthony Leung and Provost of Hong Kong University's Kai Ming-chen. Together, they led the community in a 2-year revision of the education plan for Hong Kong to mirror the needs of the transforming economic landscape. What this meant was an overhaul in the way that the curriculum was written, to move away from agricultural and low-skill labor positions to high-tech and high-economy positions in the workforce. While the planning was slower and more methodical than the American system changes, the community believed that with increased stakeholder involvement and upfront investments, it would pay dividends in the future to radically change Hong Kong from a low-skill, low-wage economy to a high-skill, high-wage economy for the future. Action steps. How to create a vision that will become a reality. In each of the examples provided, global leaders created visions in extraordinarily different ways and for different reasons. If we look back on Shanghai's purpose, their goal was to build an education system from the ground up to represent a multinational society. If we look at Hong Kong's purpose, they were radically transforming their economy from an agricultural and low-skilled economy to a high-tech, high-skilled economy. And in the United States, they were moving beyond partisan hackery to a bipartisan bill that supported all students so that the state itself would improve economically and educationally. Each leader in each of these scenarios did, however, take actionable steps in very similar ways, to include working in collaboration with all stakeholders, to include the community, researchers, policymakers, business leaders, and educators, working to identify challenges that the community was facing or would be facing as a result of global economic change, inviting various stakeholders and organizations to the table to engage in the work and to collaborate while creating a plan for educational reform, thus generating collective ownership, and making decisions that were informed by active research, real data, and engagement with the community. Take, for instance, Shanghai. The state government recruited 45 teams of scientists and industry leaders to research all facets of community health for over 24 million students, 9 million of whom were immigrants throughout China. And it is important to note that China has over 302 living languages or dialects. It made the task seem almost impossible. However, the leader of Shanghai used data analysis over those 30 factors and encouraged teams of researchers and business leaders and community leaders to explore those ideas. They created 3 plans that were then assessed by 3 leading universities in education, psychology, and economics, and the community experts were invited to each of those tables. One vision was selected for implementation, and each locality created actionable plans to realize the larger vision that united Shanghai province, thus resulting in a tight, loose leadership framework with one guiding vision and multiple pathways for achieving that vision in the locality. When we think about our guiding vision here at home, I want you to consider these questions. What does the vision look like in our community? What structures are currently in place to improve our vision? Are our values and the needs of our community reflected in our vision? And are the schools in our division aligned with the framework and the vision set forth by our superintendent and school board. To predict and be responsive to the future needs of our community is an exhausting endeavor, but it also has the potential to be enlightening and exhilarating. We know that the factory assembly line style of education is defunct. Simply turning out literate students is not enough to meet the growing needs of our community. Even as I read this chapter, I took inventory of the potential needs of our students as they enter a changing workforce. Programming, technology solutions, mastery or capstone projects, goal setting, self-reflection, social emotional lessons. How many of these ideas guide instruction in our classrooms? In what ways can we drive these practices? How often are we inviting business leaders or community leaders into our classrooms to discuss the jobs, tasks, and skills they perform that are necessary to complete their work? In this community, so close to the coastline, are we exploring problems and solutions for finding the problems that correspond with rising sea levels? Through what lens? Are we discussing effective advertising or policy-making solutions to continue expanding our tourism industry? Are military members explaining the various roles that future members can fulfill, or how it helps the local community? These are some of the questions and opportunities we can explore as we form partnerships with the community that we serve. We need to look beyond the walls of this building to bridge our curriculum with the community. I look forward to working with you and anchoring the ABCs of this building. The work in academics, the work in the behaviors that we're looking for, and in the community outreach we're looking to engage in. We want to make sure that all of this is aligned to the needs of those we serve, both the students in our classrooms and the community they return to.